Last April, when I was 29, I had an affair with a man I met at a wedding. A wedding that my fiancé and I attended together since it was a close friend of his getting married. The affair was brief, lasting just over 6 weeks, and at the time, I believed it was purely physical. There was no emotional connection with the other man, no promises exchanged, and no thoughts of a future together. I was still very much in love with my fiancé and never intended for the relationship to be anything other than temporary. Eventually, the affair ended, and I decided to go no contact with the other man, meaning I wouldn't reach out or try to rekindle things. However, things didn't completely stop as I had hoped. Every now and then, he would send me explicit photos, and without giving it much thought, I would reciprocate. At the time, I convinced myself that since the affair had ended, these exchanges didn't mean anything. I saw them as meaningless remnants of a mistake I had already put behind me. I told myself I was still committed to my fiancé, that the brief exchange of photos wasn't hurting anyone, and that it was in the past. I was wrong. Last week, my fiancé discovered the trail of photos and messages, revealing not only the affair itself, but also the fact that I had continued to exchange explicit pictures with the other man long after we had ended things. He was devastated, and I had never seen him in so much pain. The level of hurt, betrayal, and shock on his face was heartbreaking. Without saying much, he packed his things that same night and left our home. I watched him walk out, unable to comprehend the depth of the damage I had caused. Since that night, I have tried reaching out to him numerous times, calling, texting, even contacting mutual friends to see if they could help facilitate a conversation. But he refuses to speak to me. Initially, he would respond with intense anger, but as of yesterday, he has entirely blocked me from reaching him in any way. Every attempt I make is met with silence, leaving me with no idea of where we stand or what might happen next. This experience has shattered the perspective I had held for so long about infidelity. I had always believed that a truly committed, loving relationship could survive almost anything, even cheating. I thought that love, communication, and forgiveness were powerful enough to overcome betrayal. I would often say that a solid, healthy relationship could endure even when one partner made a grave mistake, as long as there was honesty and willingness to rebuild. But now, confronted with the consequences of my actions, I realize how naive and privileged that viewpoint was. It's easy to believe in forgiveness and strength when you think betrayal could never happen in your relationship, or when you're certain you would never be the one to cause that kind of pain. The reality of infidelity is so much more painful than I had ever anticipated. Watching the man I love react with so much anger and heartbreak has forced me to confront the true devastation that betrayal brings. I keep telling myself that the affair was brief and didn't involve any deep emotional connection, that maybe this should make it easier for him to forgive me. But for him, the lack of an emotional connection doesn't lessen the betrayal. To him, the fact that I continued to exchange pictures with the other man, even as we were planning our wedding, has only deepened his hurt. Part of me still clings to the hope that we can eventually sit down, talk this through, and work on repairing the relationship we once shared. But I'm beginning to question whether that's even possible anymore. I'm starting to accept that maybe I was wrong all along, and perhaps infidelity really is a deal breaker. I may not have fully understood what I risked until it was too late. Today, I received a call from our landlord. He wanted to confirm that my fiancé had officially broken the lease on our apartment. This was the first I had heard of it. My fiancé hadn't asked me or told me. He just went ahead and canceled our lease, making it clear that he was moving forward without me. I was stunned, standing there on the phone, trying to absorb what the landlord was saying. I felt as though the ground had dropped out from beneath me. I knew I had hurt him deeply, that I had made a terrible mistake, and that he had every right to feel betrayed. But I never imagined it would end like this. I thought, maybe foolishly, that he and I would at least have a final conversation. I believed that we would have a chance to say our pieces, to talk about what happened and decide together what came next. Instead, he chose to leave without a word. Since the discovery, I have tried everything to get through to him. I've called, texted, left messages, and reached out in every way I could think of. But every call and message has gone unanswered, and now he's blocked me on social media. Mutual friends who once felt like family have distanced themselves, making me feel even more isolated. The loneliness is suffocating, and in a moment of desperation, I reached out to his mother. I thought that maybe she could help me get through to him, that she might be able to help us find a way to talk. That was a mistake. She has never liked me. Since the beginning, I could tell she had her doubts and skepticism about me, especially since I had a bit of a party reputation back in college. Our conversation was cold. She seemed almost happy to tell me about everything my fiancé had done to undo our future together. She told me he had canceled the wedding venue, the cake, everything we had planned. I could feel a sense of satisfaction in her voice, almost as though she was relishing the chance to remind me of my mistakes and how unworthy she thought I was. It became clear that she had always been waiting for a reason to be rid of me, and this affair had given her just that. In that moment, I realized how thoroughly he has been erasing every trace of our relationship, all without my knowledge. I feel utterly defeated. I know I don't deserve forgiveness simply because I want it, and I understand why he's hurting. But I still struggle to comprehend why he won't at least speak to me, why he won't face me one final time. After everything we shared, the years we spent together, don't I at least deserve the chance to talk to him face to face, to understand what comes next? You're in a tough position, feeling stuck in a relationship that doesn't fulfill your needs, and yet weighed down by guilt over your emotional attachment to someone else. It's clear you care deeply for your partner and don't want to hurt him, which makes the idea of breaking up so much harder. However, the feelings you're experiencing are often what many people in emotionally stagnant relationships go through, especially when there's been a history of shared trauma, guilt, or intense memories. It's important to acknowledge that emotional cheating often arises when someone feels isolated or disconnected in their primary relationship. In your case, it seems like your partner's emotional unavailability and unwillingness to engage in meaningful conversation left a void. Over time, this void became unbearable, and you found solace in someone who could connect with you on a deeper level. You may have only recently reached out to your friend, but the underlying issues in your relationship have existed for years. You've invested so much energy and love into this relationship, particularly during the challenging years of his addiction. You supported him and were there for him through some of his lowest moments, and that took a toll on you emotionally. Now that he's sober, you would think that things might have improved, but his unwillingness to communicate or make changes, even through therapy, is a clear sign that he's comfortable with the status quo. But you're not. When it comes to breaking up, it can be tempting to avoid painful details, like the emotional attachment you formed with someone else, if they might unnecessarily hurt him. Many people feel that unless the other person specifically asks, there's no need to go into those aspects of the relationship because they aren't the root cause of the split. In your case, the emotional cheating isn't the reason you want to end things. It's a symptom of the lack of connection, communication, and emotional intimacy that you felt for a long time. While you might still love him, that love seems to be more about compassion or care than a desire to spend your life with him. The sadness you feel about hurting him, or about him feeling abandoned, shouldn't be the reasons you stay. Those emotions are understandable, but staying because of them ultimately only prolongs the inevitable. If you decide to move forward, approach the conversation honestly. Explain that you've been unhappy for years and that the issues you've tried to address aren't improving. Focusing on the core problems, his unwillingness to communicate deeply or attend therapy, keeps the conversation grounded in what really matters. Leaving a long-term partner is incredibly hard, but it's essential to remember that being in a relationship where you feel emotionally neglected isn't fair to either of you. Ending things might be painful now, but over time, it may allow both of you the chance to find happiness and fulfillment.